Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Do the Change podcast, where we're challenging and reimagining OEHS. So in this podcast, we do focus on highlighting upcoming leaders in their field and how they got to where they are today, with a special focus on the field of occupational health and environmental health. We also talk about health equity and other fields as well. So we're going to be talking about the hills and valleys of their journeys, get some insight into non-traditional paths into the field. So my name is Tara Parrish. I'm a recent graduate here from the MPH program at Cal, and our guest speaker for this episode is Ashley Smith. So welcome, Ashley.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah. So I'm going to read her bio real quick. So Ashley Smith received her undergraduate training from San Francisco State University, where she earned a degree in health education. She's also a recent graduate from UC Berkeley's MPH program here at Cal. So congratulations. And she has spent the last 3.5 years at the University of California, San Francisco, working on multiple research projects focusing on examining health disparities, which includes breaking down projects spanning from navigation programs for African-American men, COVID-19, and housing insecurity, and lung cancer prevention for minority populations. So yeah, Ashley got a nice little resume. She has done so many great things just for our community. And from what I know about Ashley, she is just like a super advocate for just Black people and the Black community. So I'm super excited to have you here on this.
Excited to be here. Thank you, Tara. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So we're going to start with a check-in question as always. So the check-in question for this episode is, what is one thing that surprised you recently, either in a positive way, or I don't want to even say in a negative way, or maybe it just like shocked you?
I would say something that kind of shocked me and then subsequently impacted me in a positive way would be the mandates in Florida about the teaching of Black history, and then the subsequent speech that Kamala Harris, the Vice President Kamala Harris, gave out, essentially speaking against these new mandates that the state of Florida Board of Education has put into place, kind of repainting history as this idea of or repainting history in a way that they kind of want history to be painted, not as it actually happened, which is really problematic for people of color. And it was just refreshing to see that Vice President speak up against it, because I haven't really heard much formal outcry outside of like the really insular communities that it impacts. So to hear the Vice President talk about it was like, finally.
And I feel like to add to that, I feel like there's not that much discourse over, maybe because people are like, oh, it's Florida, like Florida does crazy stuff, it's Florida. But it's like, yes, it is Florida. Not to brag on Florida folks, but like, yes, it's Florida, but it's also like the bigger message behind that. And I think Kamala was really intentional about like, no, like, y'all, this isn't funny. This is serious. Like, look at what they're doing to history. And I think like also bringing attention, like if they're doing it to Black history, what makes you think the other problematic histories in other communities isn't coming next? And I think she was really just trying to shake people up. Like, come on, see what's happening.
Yeah. So to your point, I definitely agree. It's definitely a bigger picture thing going on here. But I would say that was something that kind of shocked me most recently.
I'll say for me, it would be the movie, not Barbie. Barbie was good. Oppenheimer. I haven't seen it, but when I heard that man went to Berkeley, I said, ain't no way. He's a Berkeley alum. And like also like God bless TikTok, because TikTok, like some of the family members or descendants of family members who were impacted by that testing and stuff like that, they spoke out like, they didn't mention like who were like the first victims of that kind of nuclear bomb developing. And that's how I came up on that information. I was shocked. I was like, not
Yeah.
only have I not, I've heard, I haven't heard of the specific name of the project, but I have heard about it. And
Mhm.
so reading up on that and seeing like how it was talked about from one perspective,
Yeah.
and hearing the voices of the family, like, no, we are still dealing with this right now.
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I was horrified. And then I was like, oh,
Yeah.
and then I was like, Berkeley, like he's a Berkeley
Ah,
alum. And then just thinking like other folks who built like notorious legacies, like the Unabomber too, was a
mhm.
professor at Berkeley too.
Mhm.
Not to
Mhm.
say that I'm not implying that like folks like that, all folks who go to Berkeley come out like that, but it is very interesting going to Cal and then seeing all, it's like, oh my gosh, like Oppenheimer, all this good stuff. And then I was,
Yeah.
wait, like there's a whole other side to this man's story. But
Yeah.
it's like it connects to what you were talking about because
Mhm. Mhm.
it's just the way that the history is being taught, where it feels now with this information, like it feels very intentional that
Mhm.
we're not talking about all the lives that were lost,
Mhm.
all the stories that are being erased because of
Mhm.
the way it's being taught. So
Yeah. Yeah.
very similar
Yeah.
experience too, where it's like a whoa.
Yeah. I gotta check that out. I definitely gotta check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna get to the good part of this podcast. I mean, it's all good, but we're gonna get into the story, your journey. So if you can just walk us through your journey into the field of public health,
Sure.
why public health, and can you also maybe walk us through your decision to, or how did you settle on the health and social behavior concentration of your MPH?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, a lot of my formative years kind of led to the decision of wanting to become like a public health practitioner. So I grew up in a neighborhood in the southeastern portion of San Francisco, known as Bayview Hunters Point, and even as a young child, I began noticing, and then also like into my earlier youth, like teenage days, I began noticing like or stark differences between the neighborhood that I lived in and that I worked, played, grew up, shared experiences in, versus like other neighborhoods in San Francisco. Um, so a lot of that kind of just firsthand observation led me to one of my first jobs as a youth. Um, it was with an organization based out of Bayview Hunters Point called Literacy for Environmental Justice. So the one of the main goals of LEDGE was youth advocacy, essentially to kind of get to kind of rebuild the Bayview economically, kind of get in some stable infrastructure, just trying to kind of help like the residents. So for context, the Bayview is a predominantly Black, low income neighborhood, which has a relatively comparative to other parts of the city, relatively high crime rate. So worked at Ledge as a youth and did a lot of advocacy work. We actually worked to get one of the first farmers markets in the Bayview, which was really dope. And I recall as a youth, we actually wrote Starbucks corporate and we inquired as to why there were literally Starbucks almost adjacent on some corners in downtown San Francisco, literally like blocks within each other, but there were none in the Bayview. And it took them a while to respond. I remember it took them about 2 to 3 months to respond. But their response was bad. Basically, they didn't view the Bayview as an economically viable location for Starbucks. And so we were kind of like, we were pissed because like, well, that's what we need. We need businesses to come in and we need the money to flow in. So start working as a youth, moved on to another nonprofit as I got about a little older, probably about 17, 18 years old. I started working for a organization in the Western edition of San Francisco, which is known as like the Fillmore area. Start working for a nonprofit organization called Brothers for Change. So Brothers for Change was essentially like a program for reentry men of color who had been formerly incarcerated and looking to kind of just kind of get back on their feet, essentially. So we provided them with like resources such as like mental health resources, parenting courses, connecting them with Health and Human Services, CalFresh, Cash Aid, what have you, Medicaid, just connecting them to resources like housing resources, helping Black men get stable.
Yeah.
So worked there for about a year or so. And then I know this is super random, kind of got interested in pharmacy. So went to school to become a pharmacy technician, worked as a pharmacy tech for about 4 years. Worked at a hospital, which I won't name here, but I did work at a hospital for about 4 years as a outpatient pharmacy technician, and started working for a program called the MTM, which is the Medicare Therapy Management Program. And so as a tech, this was really a different type of role rather than like working as like a pharmacy tech at like Walgreens or CVS. So with this role, you really talked directly to the patients to help them manage their medication. And I started noticing something that was really peculiar to me, that a lot of the patients were having trouble with adherence. And a lot of the reasons for that, the adherence or problems around adherence were due to factors that were outside of their control, right? So it was like issues with insurance, issues with transportation to the pharmacy. Some even cited patient-provider communication issues. Well, I don't even know what this blue pill is. The provider didn't explain it to me thoroughly, so I'm just not going to take it. So my job as a pharmacy technician is that I had to check a box, right? This person isn't taking this medication, but there was not really much room for me to kind of there wasn't much room for me to kind of provide context as to why they were non-compliant with their medication. So I then just really started becoming more interested less in the clinical individualized scope of health, and became a little bit more interested in the broader idea of health and how it affects populations. And it was then I took a course at City College, Introduction to Public Health, and I made the connection between social determinants of health and the kind of like the issues with noncompliance that I've seen at Kaiser. And I would say after taking that course, that was one of the most relatable courses that I've ever taken at that point in my academic career, right? And I was sold. Everything started to make sense. It started to make sense that everything kind of came full circle. It started making sense why, as a child or a youth, I was noticing stark differences between the way my community looked and other neighborhoods in San Francisco looked. And it started to make sense why some people have health issues that are beyond their control and are caused by larger systemic factors that are, that they literally have no control over. So all these things start kind of getting the wheels turning. And it just was a really super interesting field that really caught my, that really kind of snagged on like my heartstrings, but also because I'd seen it firsthand living and growing up in Hunters Point, I felt like this is it. After taking that class at City College, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. I hated to be a trader. I always have a place for pharmacy, but after taking that course, I said, this is it. I literally quit my job as a pharmacy technician, and I decided to pursue a career in public health. And here I am now.
I mean, we are glad to have you. Like, I mean, I feel like the field needs you and needs your insight. I love how you said that, like, even as you were like, I think that you taking the extra time to even like reflect on, it's not just folks not complying, it is like other things that impact someone's ability to do that is not in their control. And I think just even having that conscious thought process is needed. And yeah, and I just appreciate how you were also trying to contextualize like what is going on. It's not just for being non-compliant. And you're right that sometimes with, not sometimes, 90% of the time with medicine, it's like they blame the individual on not doing something rather than taking the responsibility of, like you said, like someone came in and said the doctor didn't even explain it to me, so I'm not going to take it. That's a very reasonable and logical like reason to not take something. You shouldn't be taking something that you don't know what it is. No one's explained it to you. You don't understand what the purpose is. Like that makes total sense. But then like the way in which it's then like communicated in the medical space is person doesn't listen and doesn't take medication, but no one dares to put, I didn't even bother explaining it, therefore they decided not to take it. So that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, it's just hearing your journey of like, you made the joke about trader, which is like, I was like, but I get it where it's just like public health is, I don't want to say it's the opposite of medicine because it's not, but it's a version of how you can center people in medicine and center like what's happening with them. So yeah. And I guess my follow-up question is that what led you specifically to the concentration of health and social behavior? Did you feel like that particular concentration was more so getting at like social determinants of health and like things that's going on that impacts it? Or yeah, I guess that's my follow-up.
Yeah. That's almost exactly it. So I became interested in the field specifically, or the concentration of health and social behavior, just because I mean, when I've taken courses on like before my time at Cal, just courses on like anthropology and thinking of like the ways in which the environment and the ways in which we kind of interact with people on an interpersonal level, how those kind of impact health and behavior and like subsequently health outcomes. Always kind of really interested me more so than the other concentrations that were like global health, maternal and child health, epi. I just felt like that's where my interests specifically lie, just because of my formative years growing up in Bayview and seeing how like the how folks interacted with their environment and the subsequent outcomes, health and social outcomes. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
No, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And I also just want to pause and further uplift like Bayview Hunters Point, particularly in SF, where like the government has failed them a lot, particularly like was it the Navy? I don't want to.
It's Navy, Tetra Tech.
Go ahead.
There's a multitude of
right now. It's still not solved right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There's like a multitude of players that have kind of led to the way that the Bayview is kind of overlooked as a community. One of my biggest goals is to kind of use our strengths, or rather like our assets and our skills as a community, to kind of build up the community. But I think we can go into that a little bit later. But that's one of my main goals.
Yeah, I'll definitely, I'm gonna circle around to that because I know you got ideas. So I guess so in that journey, and even now kind of post-grad, were there any mentors or folks who helped kind of push you along during that journey, offer guidance or support? And how did that support kind of help your growth as like a leader in your field?
I would say one formidable role model that I had that'll always stand out for me was a pharmacy student. Her name was Nani Waneri. She was a pharmacy student at UCSF, and about 2015 2005 to 2006, and she personally mentored me. I'm talking real mentorship, like literally would come to my home in the Bayview to kind of talk with me. This is kind of when I was still a little straddling the fence. I'm like interested in pharmacy, but nonetheless, less content focused and more overall just in the realm of mentorship and guidance. It was super, literally almost like seeing a real life, someone from like a movie screen or a TV in real life, because to that time I had no role models, or I knew of literally no one who graduated from college. Not anyone in my family, not anyone in my immediate family. So to have Nani, she was actually tabling at my school for folks. I think I like career day. She was originally from the East Coast, I think like the DMV area. But like, yeah, I just one-on-one mentorship really, and also seeing her professionalism, her work ethic was super refreshing to me as well. And I kind of got a peek at the UC system at a very early age and how like the UC system worked. And I think that's why I think she's another reason why I was always super interested in attending AUC. And, subsequently I would go on to both attend and work at UC. So shout out to Nani.
Yeah. What's so funny? I was literally going to ask like, what made you choose like UC Berkeley? Because I feel like the UC system itself, if you weren't in it, choosing to be in it is a whole other game. So like what made you, I mean, you said that the influence of like your mentor and also that allowed you to get a taste of the UC system. So I guess how was your experience applying and being in the UC system?
Yeah.
What you've experienced, and I guess like what would you rate it like out of 10? Just
I think that honestly speaking, working in the UC system after having had worked in another major hospital system, it's literally like night and day. The UC work-life balance it's unmatched. I feel like as like I'm speaking from the employee side first, and then I'll get to the student side. From the employee side, I think that UC really values the contributions of their staff, their faculty, their employees at all levels, like regardless of like where you fall, your contributions and your inputs are like seriously, they're appreciated. And I have not, and the work environment is just A1. This is not a ad for
recruitment. This is a low
recruitment. I don't work for HR. But like I can honestly say that that my work experience here has been like it supersedes any position that I've had before. On the student side, I would say that because I can't really compare within, and I feel like me to compare my undergrad to Cal, I don't think that's a really fair comparison. So I'll just say that as a student, I think that the rigor of the program was very intense, and I feel like it did adequately prepare me for taking on a role. Particularly so a leadership role in public health. Are there issues within the UC system, school system? Yes, there are. There are a lot of there are a lot of issues, so much so that I won't get into that rabbit hole here. But yes, there's definitely issues within the system. But as a whole, I think that it was a really, really great program.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree where there are some problems, but I think overall, I feel like there's not a lot of things that can knock me off now. Like you know what I'm saying? Where it's like, it just teaches you different skills. And I think because the UC system is such a bureaucracy too, that it also gives you a taste of like that type of system is definitely replicated in other fields and parts. So once you get Berkeley was my first experience with like a fully built out bureaucracy where I was like, whoa, I got to go through 5, 6 people. Which was, I mean, it's eye opening, and I would have rather did it in an academic setting than like at like a job or something and getting a taste of that. That might have but yeah, so I'm going to do a little topic shift, kind of what we're talking about, but more so about your current position right now, which is a research data analyst at UCSF. You did you touched on like the work culture, particularly there. And so if you could also touch on one, like how did you first kind of get your feet into the UCSF system? Like, what was that application job process?
Sure.
Or if you did networking or things of that nature? And like, what would you recommend for folks who maybe are interested in getting in the UC system in regards to work? And yeah, also if you want to touch on like the work that you're doing currently in that position too, because it's really dope too. Sorry, that's a lot.
Yeah. No worries. Okay. So how I got into the UC system. So it's a funny story. I got into the UC system by default. So during my last semester, during undergrad at San Francisco State University, we were required to complete a externship in which we had to complete, I think if I recall, I think it was 400-hour externship. So we had to do that. And so I started in as they put me in and working as like a research coordinator. And this was super interesting to me because I recall my interview with the PI, the principal investigator. I literally, aside from coursework, I had almost no experience with research at all, like none. Like I don't even think I knew what IRB meant, what an IRB or process looked like or meant. So completed my 400 hours. The person who was mentoring me was actually, she worked there at UCSF, but she was leaving for medical school to go into medical school. So I was then offered the position to fill her position. So I was super hesitant at first. I even talked with the preceptor at San Francisco State University, even first for being placed there, and then also for taking this position, because initially I'll be transparent. I wanted my first choice for my externship I wanted to go to the San Francisco Department. I wanted to be placed at the San Francisco Department of Public Health. So when I got placed at UCSF, I literally called a meeting with the preceptor, and I'm like, no. She's like, yes. I'm like, no. She's like, no, yeah, you're going here, and you're gonna excel. I'm like, dude, so I'm going in every day. I'm just like, I'm seeing my other cohort members. They were there. They were there as well, working on different projects. And so I started kind of feeling like something was up when everyone else was leaving, but I was still there. I kept being asked to come in to finish different things. I'm like, okay, what's this about? So eventually the person who was mentoring over me, she left. I filled her in her position, and I've been at UCSF there ever since. So I was then, I worked as a clinical research coordinator for about a year or two, and then I transferred into my now role as a research data analyst, which is a little bit more of a hands-on role as far as like the data analytics side goes, less so of the clerical side. A lot of the clinical research coordinator work is very clerical. There's a lot of high level administrative work that comes along with being a CRC. And now in the role as a research analyst, a lot of what I do is really, really, really sitting down with the principal investigator of research projects, really getting a very solid understanding of their what they want to do, of their like what they want to investigate, what research question it is that they want to pose. They present to us like an outline. From there, we kind of draft the protocol, the methodology, of course, all under the eye of the PI, right? We're not doing this work by ourselves.
Yeah.
I would liken it to like they're the doctors, we're the nurses of research. Yeah. And yeah, I work primarily on the qualitative side. I'm less on the quant side of things. We have a whole team dedicated to quant, so that's not necessarily a worry. And I enjoy. I'm on the side that I like to be. I love quant.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of what I do is just kind of really supporting the PIs and their research projects, from whether we're interviewing, whether we're drafting surveys for the interviews, whether we're analyzing data, whether we're reviewing the literature to help guide our work. For example, right now, with a lot of the work that I'm doing is proprietary, so I'll just talk about it at like a very high surface level. Without giving away too much, because a lot of these projects are still currently underway. But for example, right now we're conducting a scoping review for programs for Black men with prostate cancer, and we're really working alongside. We have a developed CAD, a developed community advisory team of Black men facing or who have experienced prostate cancer. And we're really, really incorporating their viewpoints into a lot of the work that we're doing, a lot of the research that we're doing. We're including them essentially at every formative step. So if you could look at it as kind of like community-based participatory research, but not necessarily, because there are certain things that we do, like they're not involved with like the data analysis specifically, but they are involved in a large role, like a large formative role of the project. Also working on a project now, kind of examining the landscape of housing programs, specifically like subsidies, the way subsidies kind of work, and whether or not they help or hinder folks. Yeah, and without getting into too much detail, those are kind of like some of the larger pieces of work that I'm doing. Yeah, UCSF.
Hi guys, this is Tyra Parrish, your host for this episode, and we have reached the end of part 1 of this conversation with this amazing speaker. Don't click out yet, because part 2 to this conversation has already been posted. So go ahead and click over to the next page, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and Spotify page.